8. 3 is company. Ace kicked at the ground, trying to propel herself away from the gaping maw that was descending on her. Momentarily, her torch flashed upwards, and she saw the forked tongue nestling in the back of the mouth in a sea of foaming saliva. She launched a desperate punch at the hideous jaw. There was a sudden rush of air, and a short shaft of wood impaled itself in the side of the monster's head. More followed in quick succession, striking at the creature's face and torso. It fell back, searching for its attacker, and swinging its arms in a savage cartwheel. "Get away from the demon, girl!" a voice shouted. Ace suddenly found herself surrounded by figures dashing through the darkness. She saw her torchlight gleam on unsheathed swords. A hand fell on her shoulder and pulled her back. She turned to look. It was the doctor. "Professor," she gasped. "I think we've been rescued, Ace. Help me with Bathsheba." A young man, clad in chainmail and with long black hair about his shoulders, ran up to them and shouted, "Come with me! My men will deal with the demon. You are lucky that we found you. Come on!" He gave the doctor a slap with the broad side of his sword to encourage him to move. "This way." He led them through the darkness of swirling snow. Gradually, small pinpoints of firelight resolved themselves, and they found themselves among humans, old and young. Welcoming hands guided them into the midst of the crowd. "Who are you?" the man who had rescued them asked. "I'm the doctor, and these are my friends, Ace and Bathsheba. And you are?" "I am Trelane of the Clear, leader of my clan and the guardian of the virginity of Bridget. Am I to take it from your clothes that you are strangers in this land? Outcasts, perhaps, from the place that Nuada tells us is called Earth?" He took them through the crowd which was waiting for the warrior's return. "Something like that. Is it true that the Land Mother's mate lies there?" "I wouldn't know about that." "These are your people, are they?" "These are the remnants. We travel through the land to Dinorban, gathering up the stragglers. Nuada says we must not delay, for the demons roam at will throughout Tir Nanog. My people tried to contain them, but in great numbers they are difficult to defeat. Come into my tent, and we will talk." "Your tent?" asked Ace. "I thought you said you were going to Dinorban." "We camp here for 3 days. There are men of the Alancluith and the Rulmirth who are to meet here. Here, I will call for some food." He left them alone in the small, dank tent, which smelt of mould and decay, but was at least warm against the cold of the open air. A mound of furs was piled in one corner. They smelled musty, but the doctor took one and hung it around Bathsheba's shoulders. He looked to Ace. "No, I'm all right, Professor, just a bit. Well, you know, that thing was horrible." "A demon," Bathsheba said. "It bore the mark." The tent flap was pushed aside, and Trelane came in holding a leather bag which steamed slightly in the cold air. In his other hand he carried a jug. He dropped the bag onto the ground and let go of the drawstrings. A tug on the edges brought the bag apart, and it spread into a small square with a pile of hot meat in the centre. "There you are. Eat." He smiled at Ace, and she reached forward and took a piece. It tasted good. Trelane rummaged amongst his belongings and brought out some cups. He filled them each with the liquid from the jug. The doctor took a cup and looked at it inquiringly. "Mead," Trelane told him. "Ah, a mixture of honey and water." "Those are the basic ingredients, yes. Please drink." The doctor took a sip and smacked his lips appreciatively. "Good," he gasped suddenly, and with a kick like a mule. "So, you're from Earth," Trelane said. "More or less." "Yes," said Ace. "I'm not," whispered Bathsheba. "Tell me about it," Trelane asked. "What do you want to know?" Ace asked. "There's a lot to tell. It's a big place, you know." "As big as Tir Nanog?" "Bigger, I should think," the doctor told him, "from what we've seen." And is it like Tir na nog? Not much, said Ace, but I think you'd like it. Trelane looked at Ace appreciatively. She was a lovely young girl in every aspect. Aye, I think I would. Trelane, the doctor said, is it a great distance to Grevney's Island from here? A 2-day journey on a fast horse, if you could avoid the demons. That is where you are headed, then? That's the plan. A foolhardy one. Grivney will not listen to reason. A rare insanity has gripped his mind since Aron invaded the sky. I can give you horses if you must persist. We have been given no option. Drifid will not let us re-enter Dinorban, so we must take the chance that he has given us. Trelane shook his head. It is no chance at all. But if I give you horses, then you may go as far as you can, and then return to us. I am sure that the Tuatha will see reason and allow you back into Dinorban. How are they holding out against the Formward and the Furbolg? It's 3 days since we left, but at that time all seemed well on the human side. A little overcrowded, perhaps. Bathsheba's asleep, Ace told them. You must take Bathsheba with you, the doctor told Trelane. Her family were all killed in a demon attack. She can ride on one of the carts, but you must stay with us for the night. We would be grateful of that. Yeah, said Ace. It'll be good to have some sort of roof over our heads. You may use this tent. I've already vacated my own tent for 2 of the women who are giving birth, so it isn't as if I've become used to the smell of this one. I think you'll have enough rugs here. He got up to leave. Doctor, perhaps we could leave the 2 girls. I think we may need to discuss certain things. Trelane stood outside the tent and waited for the small man with the penetrating eyes and the tired, lined face. He heard the man's voice soothing the girl, and then he came out. I must check the horses. Come with me. Trelane, may I ask a favour of you? Of course, Doctor. I am the leader of the Clear, and so I am the man most able to grant you a favour. It's Ace. I'm worried about her. Ah, Ace. Trelane thought it a strange name, but she could, of course, take the name of a clan if it became necessary. Yes, she would be horrified to hear me say this, but I think that this journey may become too dangerous for her. Now that I've seen these demons, their ferocious animal power, the malignancy intrinsic in them, I don't think I can justify taking Ace with me when there is a safer option for her. I understand this. You want her to come with me? Yes, but she isn't likely to want to go with you. Can you not tell her? Order her? Trelane thought the doctor must be a weak man if he could not control his womenfolk. I'm afraid Ace isn't one to listen to commands. So if I just slip away before she awakes tomorrow morning, there will be a horse prepared for you. Thank you, Trelane. And now, Doctor, you can do a favour for me. Tell me about Earth. Tell me all about it. Bathsheba awoke in the darkness. Something was wrong. When she had last looked, the doctor had been sitting atop the pile of rugs, reading a book by the light of a small burning stick. But now, even though it was dark, she could sense that he was no longer there. She felt that he was still near, and so she got up. Ace was still lying asleep. Bathsheba trod carefully as she left the tent. A light was burning over where the horses were corralled. Bathsheba limped over in that direction, because something told her that was where the doctor was. He couldn't be leaving, not leaving her. She had known, ever since he had called her by the same name that Rush had used, that she must stay by him, that he would lead her out of the nightmare that this world had become. Why was he leaving so secretly? She peered into the enclosure. The doctor was sitting atop a magnificent black horse with a pack of supplies slung over its back. He was gazing over towards the tent where Ace lay. Suddenly, the horse began to walk towards the gate. A solitary figure let the doctor's horse out, and then vanished away to his bed. Bathsheba snuffled to herself and sank down against the fence. She found herself looking amongst the forest of horses' legs, lit from overhead by the swinging lantern. And there, lost amongst the tree-like legs, was a midget horse. Bathsheba gasped. This was her chance. She crawled under the fence and wormed her way through the massive bodies towards the dwarfling pony. She scooped up a handful of straw and offered it to the pony. It munched on the dried grass speculatively and didn't resist when Bathsheba flopped over it and tried to pull herself on. It was a struggle, but eventually she was aboard. She knotted her hand into the pony's mane and then nudged it forward. It worked its way to the gate and nudged it forward. Luckily, the gatesman hadn't been terribly conscientious. Bathsheba felt glad that she was able to secure the gate properly behind her. She didn't want the Clears horses to escape. She still seemed to be able to sense that the doctor was moving slowly, and so she kicked the pony into the equivalent of a gallop. It was a bouncy ride for someone unused to riding, but it paid dividends, for she soon caught up with the doctor. But she hung back, afraid that he would return her to Chalane's people. And the night moved on. "Professor," Ace called out. "Professor, where are you?" She stood outside the tent and looked around. A sleepy figure emerged from a nearby tent and looked at her blearily. "What are you shouting about?" it asked. "Oh, you're the girl we rescued last night. Thought Chalane had been hiding you away from us. I'm Bad Ord. Can you keep the noise down, please?" He retreated back into his tent. Ace saw another figure standing under a flaming torch at the far side of the camp. She hurried over to it. It was Chalane. "Chalane? Where's the doctor?" Chalane put a hand on Ace's shoulder. "He asked me to tell you, Ace, that—" "He's gone, hasn't he? He's left me here. I knew it. "Ace, he did it because he was worried about you." "I'll have to go after him." "What?" "I'll have to go after him, of course." Chalane grabbed hold of her arm. "Get off me!" "Now listen, Ace. The doctor left you so that he could go and see Goivni. He thought that it would be too dangerous for you." "Oh, yeah? So why'd he take Bathsheba with him?" She shook him off and ran over to her tent. She snatched up her rucksack and her jacket. Chalane was waiting outside for her. "Ace, you're my responsibility. I can't let you go." "Bog off!" She pushed past him and ran out of the camp. Chalane cursed her and the promise he had made to the doctor. He wheeled round and went through the camp to find his deputy. He didn't bother looking in the man's tent, but went instead to what had been his own tent. He entered quietly with reverence, as one should when one stood in the presence of the landmother. Glyn was kneeling by his wife, clutching tightly onto her hand. "Glyn, my brother," Chalane called him softly. Glyn turned his head towards his clan chief. "Yes, my lord?" "The girl Ace, who we rescued from that foul creature last night, has gone searching for her companion, the doctor. I made a promise last night that we would look after her, so I must follow her and bring her back. I will not be gone long, and I will be here to give the child its oath." "Very good, my lord." "How is she?" Glyn stood and quietly spoke to Chalane. "It is difficult. Her endurance is being tested to the limit." "It'll be a strong child, then," Chalane reassured him, and then turned to leave. "Keep Aran away from this tent." "Dagda is with you," Glyn responded. Chalane left the tent and murmured to himself, "And with you, my friend." He ran over to the corral, leapt onto his stallion, and with a few words he had it running and jumping over the gate. He pulled the stallion up short and snatched the swinging lantern. It was dark out on the plain. He took the horse round the camp until he came across Ace's tracks, and then he set out along them. "Ace," he called. "Ace!" He expected to come across her almost immediately, but from her tracks he could tell that she was running, and at some speed. Ace felt angry with the doctor. She'd never bottled out of anything before, so why would he try to leave her behind this time? As her rage grew, something within her grew also. When she'd been transported to the planet of the cat people, her mind and body had been influenced by the strange forces at work there. She had thought that the change had been only temporary, but the seed still seemed to be inside her. The sense of the hunt for the doctor, haunted her mind, and her body altered subtly, accommodating itself to the greater turn of speed she required. The darkness around her grew vivid with her changed perceptions, and she let out a cry of joy. She liked feeling this way, and so long as she remained in control, it was all right. Trelane swore savagely and turned his horse. In the gloom he had missed the trail again. He cast around until he had relocated it, and then continued his pursuit. That was the second time. The girl was moving unbelievably fast. He kicked the stallion to a faster gallop. Ace heard the hoofbeats coming up behind her and tried to accelerate. Her nervous system toned itself up, reducing the blood supply to her stomach, increasing it to her muscles. Her pupils dilated and her mouth went suddenly dry. But it was no good. Her pursuer was going to catch her, and she would have to turn and fight. She shook the thought from her mind. She had almost let it slip then. Her head rapidly became clear. Acknowledging that she was caught, she drew to a halt and waited for the rider to appear. "Ace, thank Dagda I've caught you. Did you really think you'd be able to find the doctor in this?" "I could have if I'd tried." "Don't be a fool. You'd been left wandering around here until a demon found you. Now, get up on my horse." He extended a hand to pull her up. "You're right, I suppose," Ace admitted. "But it doesn't matter anyway. The doctor didn't leave me behind to be safe. He left me because there's something he needs me to do." She allowed herself to be pulled onto the horse. "Whatever you say, Ace. Either way, you're lucky I found you." He turned the horse and set off back to the camp. The doctor brought his horse to a halt between two hills. The lee side of the western hill was clear of snow, and so he allowed the mare to graze the frost-rimmed grass. He took the blanket off its back, and a small cloud of steam drifted off its skin. The doctor held up his lantern and looked around. Marks in the mud caught his attention. He knelt down by them, not that he needed to identify what had caused them. They were tire marks, the same as those he and Ace had seen by the stone circle in Dinorban. Somebody had driven by this place in a car. He couldn't say how recently they had been made. The ground had frozen solid, and so hadn't changed for some days. The doctor gave a shrug. It was just another thing to take into account. He left the tyre tracks, sank into the lotus position beside the quietly munching horse, and collected his far-flung thoughts together. After a time, a noise impinged on his meditation, and he lifted one eyelid to see what he could see. A small, skewbald pony was hoving into view from behind the foot of the hill. A figure was slumped across it, apparently asleep. The doctor gave a sigh and eased himself up. He patted his mare on its near-side flank and strolled over to the now ambling pony. It stopped and gazed at him. The doctor tapped the small figure on her shoulder. "Bats," he said, "whatever are you doing? Why can't humans stay put when you want them to?" Sleep-ruled eyes peered mistily at him. "I can't really take you back to Trelane, can I? Suppose you'll have to come with me." Bathsheba smiled weakly, and then collapsed back into her dreams. A sudden roaring like thunder surrounded Trelane and Ace. "By all that's... the horses! They're stampeding!" Trelane identified the noise. Panic filled his voice. Something must have happened back at the camp. He gave a wide cry that the horses seemed to respond to, for it increased its pace, dodging the hurtling bodies of its companions. A dull orange glow hung in the air to the south. It couldn't be produced by a single fire, Ace thought. The whole camp must be ablaze. "By Dagda," she heard Trelane whisper behind her. By the time they reached the encampment, it was already far too late. Nothing had been left alive. Every man, woman, and child had been slaughtered, their bodies mangled horribly and strewn about the wrecked tents. The melting snow was stained red by the bloodshed. Scattered fires, already dying down, crackled where tents had collapsed onto burning lanterns. The body of a demon, seemingly the only casualty on the attacker's side, lay on the outskirts of the camp. Trelane picked through the wreckage, his face salty with tears. Ace followed him, her mind numb with horror. At the centre of the camp lay the bodies of the 2 pregnant women. Their bellies had been slit open, and the babies plucked out, and then strangled with their own umbilical cords. Ace left Trelane and vomited bile onto a still clean patch of ground. Then she went and stood by the horse, looking into the dark. She began to cry. Behind her, she heard Trelane raise a cry to the heavens. She couldn't bring herself to turn and look. Moments later, Trelane's hand fell on her shoulder. His voice was dead. All have been slain. I must honour them. Will you help me? What do you want me to do? She asked. I must build a pyre, burn their bodies. They cannot be left to scavengers. I realise you may be unused to such an atrocity, but if you collect materials for burning, I will gather together the corpses. They are my people in death as much as they were in life. All right, I'll do that. They set about the grisly task with heavy hearts. Was this the doctor's idea of committing her into safe hands? When Trelane announced that it was finished, Ace looked with some surprise at the camp. But there are still people left. They are not people. They were witches. They were part of the demon attack. I shall not contaminate my people's purifying flames by burning those scum with them. He set a flaming torch against the pyre and stood back as it flared up into life. He gazed into the flames, and everything was consumed, and then he turned. I have gathered together enough supplies for our journey back to Dinorban. Come, it is time we left this place of death. They halted for the night on the outskirts of the forest of Coed. Trelane had decided not to take the road through the middle of the forest, and had, instead, tracked along the outermost western edges, hoping to avoid the obvious danger of ambushes. When they stopped, they penetrated a few 100 yards into the forest to remove themselves from the dangerous open. Trelane lit a fire and then piled stones around its edge so that its light was contained. He boiled up some water and then vanished into the trees for a few minutes, returning with a bird that looked as though it might have had grouse in its ancestry. They cooked it over the fire and then picked at the small amount of tasteless flesh. When they had finished eating, they sat and faced each other across the fire. What are witches? Ace asked. I mean, to me, witches are old biddies who fly around on broomsticks wearing pointy black hats. I don't think that's what they are to you. Those people at the camp look the same as anyone else. How could you tell they were witches? Ace, Trelane said, I would rather not talk about the camp. But witches are easy to recognise. There are 5 races who inhabit Tir Nanog. There are the humans, the Formois, the Shay, the Firbolg, and the Kethil. All but the humans bear a mark upon their bodies, a small triangular mark whose points are surmounted by small shapes. As I said, all but the humans bear this mark. But there are some humans who do carry the mark. They are full of evil and malice and hatred for true humans. They are the witches. And where do you look for this mark? It is invariably behind the ear, on the nape of the neck. And that's how you recognise them? There are other ways. In some it is possible to see it in their eyes. The eyes are the window on the soul. What? Something I read, I think. Ah. Others, the worst cases, are able to shift their forms. Werewolves! Ace! Witches, quasi-demons, please, I'd rather not talk about it any longer. Right. There was silence for a few minutes. Ace looked at the stones around the fire. One of them was beginning to glow dimly. When we met you, you said you were the leader of your clan and something else. Guardian of the virginity of Bridget. That's it? Who's Bridget? Bridget is one of the original Tuatha, one of our goddesses, the goddess of poetry and fire. Poetry? Yes. To become clan leader, I had to demonstrate my ability to control fire and to compose poetry. How did you do that? Grasping burning coals in my hands, walking over hot ashes and other tests. "Wicked! And the poetry?" Trelane's chest swelled with pride. "I am the best in the clan. Listen." And Dianech comes to the river. He saw that there were many of the Lu there, with a fire of rill in their bellies. They wield swords of blazing virtue, take from the castle that is built by the Tuatha out of Rock of Ages. He paused and looked to Ace, whose eyes had grown wide during this recitation. She realized that some comment was expected of her, and so she started to nod her head vigorously. This, obviously, wasn't quite enough, so she said, "Yes, very good. And you're the best in your clan, right? Phew. Some competition? No, it's all right." She waved him down. "There's only so much culture I can take in one night." Ace curled up inside her sleeping bag, bringing her knees up close to her chest to keep herself warm. The method worked, because soon she found herself dreaming. She was lying in a boat, drifting slowly down a river. The sun was dancing on the water, casting reflective ripples up onto the green canopy. She dangled her fingers into the cool water and revelled in the warmth of the sun upon her body. An orchestra struck up in the background, and she gave a casual wave to them where they floated by on an enormous water lily. Simon Groom, a childhood crush, kissed her gently on her forehead, and then dragged his enormous rough tongue across her cheek. She spluttered awake. The sky had cleared enough for some starlight to filter through, but a large section of the sky was cut off by a huge silhouette. It muzzled her cheek again. "Trelane!" she called out, about to tell him that his horse had slipped its rope. But something stopped her. There was a soft but sharp touch against her forehead, and suddenly a voice appeared in her head, and a soft nimbus surrounded the creature that loomed over her. On first sight, it appeared to be a horse, but it was something more. Its outline shone as though it was a cloud concealing the sun, and deep within it starlight danced. An overwhelming sensation of goodness seemed to flow from the tip of its horn, still pressed against her skin, and suffused her body with pleasure. When the voice spoke inside her head, it was the voice of an angel, or a lover, soft and caressing. "Greetings, Ace." "How do you know my name? What are you? Are you a unicorn?" "I am called Bat. I am one of the Kefil." "You are a unicorn." "Get away from her." The unicorn's head whipped up, and it turned its kind eyes on Trelane. He had snatched up his scabbard and now pulled out his sword. "Get away from her, Kefil." Trelane used the word as an insult. "Tell him there are demons coming." "She says there are demons coming," Ace told Trelane. "Led here by the Kefil, no doubt." He raised his sword to strike at the unicorn. Ace moved so that she was between Trelane and Bat. "I have come to offer the protection of the herd for your journey back to Dinorban." "She says that we can journey with her herd back to Dinorban." "Never. Consort with demon's spawn? Never." The unicorn's voice was as mild as ever. Ace wondered if this was entirely due to it being only a voice in her mind. "Ace, what about you? Will you return with the herd?" Ace looked at Trelane, his prejudices against this beautiful creature fully revealed. "I'm going with Bat," she told him. "No, Ace. I made a promise to the doctor." He dropped his sword and took hold of her arm. She shook his hand off. "Oh, I didn't," she told him. She picked up her sleeping bag and stuffed it into her rucksack. She climbed onto Bat's back. "Tell him again that there are demons coming this way," Bat asked her. Ace told Trelane, "She says that there are definitely demons coming." "Ha!" Bat began to move. Ace turned to look at Trelane, standing amongst the trees. Suddenly her vision blurred, and her head was jolted forwards as Bat gathered speed. "I'm sorry, Trelane," she whispered. "Goodbye."